Hi guys, welcome to CopyPress's March webinar on behavior analysis to know your audience and maximize your budget. Today we have our CEO, Dave Snyder, welcome, as well as VP of Marketing, Randy from Jumpshot. Hello guys.
Hello, I forgot to say something, but hello.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. All right, so today we're going to be talking about behavior analysis. Specifically, Randy, can you give us the elevator pitch on what Jumpshot does?
Sure. So Jumpshot is a marketing analytics company. We have a consumer panel of 100 million devices that spans 188 countries, and it's 40% mobile. So what we do is we capture the clickstream activity of those 100 million devices in our panel. Clickstream activity is the browsing activity at the browser level on a device, looking at every URL in the step and order that somebody's actually been doing their normal internet activity. And so it goes from browsing a site like Amazon, looking at page views of product views, all the way through what they actually purchase as a transaction. And then we have the ability to follow that person or group of people to other sites as well. So we can see what videos they watched on Netflix, what travel vacation they purchased on Expedia, what Google query they did in their initial search, and then be able to tie all that together. And we anonymize and aggregate all of that data because we're not really interested at the individual level. We're looking more for behavioral trends and audience trends overall. And that's what we provide to our customers. So a detailed view into how individual sites work in terms of their web activity compared against their competitive set. Or what's more interesting and more related to this is we have the ability to look at a variety of audiences and what their online behavior is like compared to the general population. We like to say on some levels that imagine Jumpshot is sort of the Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics of the entire internet. We get to see everybody's backend analytics, even though we don't technically have access to their backend analytics.
Cool. Just as a note for people listening to the podcast, CopyPress currently has new neighbors coming in, and they are constructing something on the other side of the wall. Hopefully, it's not an issue, but there may be noises, and we will not be stopping and starting. So topic for today, behavior analysis. Jen, and when we created this white paper, we created it in conjunction with Jumpshot. What were we trying to really take an overview of?
The big overview is just to recognize how companies can recognize their audience more and optimize their content to fit and maximize their budget and get more leads.
Okay. And this is actually a topic I talked about at DFWSEM recently. And it's something that's pretty interesting in the content space, how little we're utilizing data that we already have to plan out events. Mm-hmm. And then furthermore, just analyzing data that we already have to change up content. We're just guessing a lot of the time. So I think this is going to be a good topic, a good white paper. So we'll go ahead and get started. Audience analysis is typically a forgotten aspect of content marketing. I think recently people are looking more at how can I create personas and buyer personas. So that's been good to see that conversation happening. But what they're not also looking at is what those buyers and those personas do throughout the funnel. So they're not saying, this persona will come in on this page and then visit 2 to 3 pages in their lifetime and go from there. So we're going to put a poll now. Do you currently use audience or behavior analytics? I'm guessing that's what you were about to say.
Yes,
before I started.
Exactly.
All right.
So the poll is up.
So a question I have for you, Randy, how often do you find customers utilizing behavioral analytics before Jumpshot?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the types of companies that we talk to tend to be enterprise, pretty sophisticated overall marketers, so very large companies in the retail, e-commerce, travel space, institutional finance, things like that. and CPGs. So we tend to work with people who are pretty sophisticated in terms of their overall backend analytics. But I think there's been a study done somewhere that said most companies have, the problem isn't finding new data, it's figuring out how to analyze the data that they already have. I think people have said that they're only really actioning on 15% of their own in-house data. But what they don't have the ability to look at is they don't have a lot of access to other data around from other companies or somewhere else. So I would say that the companies we work with a number of them tend to have an in-house analytics team. They obviously have a marketing team that has some sophistication with analytics, but the larger ones definitely have an in-house analytics. But as deep as they get into behavior and audience, it's still pretty early in the ball game. And they're right now, I think, analyzing a number of different sources and companies who are trying to provide a better, more holistic view of their overall customer activity that's happening off-site. So I'd say it's still pretty new.
Yeah, because I would gather that. I mean, even for us, like most of the time, we're looking at acquisition channels when we're looking at analytics. Like I know I tend to look at acquisition channels and then conversion channels, those being the main things that I look at. And only recently for CopyPress have I started to branch into the behavioral piece. And so I'm guessing that's what a lot of analytics teams even are still doing. Is, where's the traffic coming from? How does this traffic produce? But not necessarily who is this traffic. And then furthermore, you get into the issue where you guys come in to resolve where really they're segmenting it based on their traffic on their site, not necessarily what are people doing before or after.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a gap that hasn't really been filled for sure after the fact. But companies, I think, just like they use Google Analytics or they're using Adobe Analytics, or those are kind of the two main ones. And in there is abilities to segment their web traffic into different audiences. They're very in touch with their CRM team and using their in-house CRM and customer warehouses to segment out who their best customers are and what are they purchasing on their site and what are they looking at and how often do they buy and how often do they shop and do they go in store, and being able to integrate their omni-channel user for what they've purchased in store and how often do they visit the website. Like that is still very, very difficult, but there are a lot of companies who are starting to do it. But just like you said, where they lose or where they stop, they're inside that walled garden really of their own data. And they lose that visibility of what people are doing 2 steps before they visit their site. Because as you said, people can easily see, but through tracking parameters, codes, referring URLs, where people were 1 step before they visit their site. But they lose them if you go a step beyond that. And once somebody comes onto the site, typical conversion rate for most companies, granted it's different by vertical, but ranges in the 3 to 6% range. But that means that there's 94 to 97% of everybody's traffic that winds up being on a site and doesn't actually convert or buy anything. So the question is where do those people go? You can track them through a cookie or a pixel and be able to target them at some point, but that still doesn't give you the insight as to actually what sites do they go visit. Our type of behavioral analytics that we do helps companies solve that problem.
Right. And so what we're going to look at now is, how do we understand those customers better and how do we create better campaigns? All right. So 2017 is the year of marketing analytics. Companies are spending 6.7% of their budget on analytics. They're expected to increase spend to 11.1% over the next 3 years. And the number of marketing tech companies has doubled, almost 2,000 in the past 2 years, to almost 2,000. So, and I think we're seeing the rise of this marketing analytics as we're seeing the rise of big data, marketing automation, and then artificial intelligence, all those things kind of being bucketed together. And we'll talk about those later. But I think overall, what people listening to this webinar are going to need to realize is similarly to where 3 years ago, you started getting questioned by people in your office, hey, what are we doing about content marketing? And it needs to become something you started to focus on. What we're talking about now with marketing analytics, this is what the next phase is going to be. People are going to start to be like, all right, well, how are we analyzing the behaviors of our users? And if you're just still stuck on that, like I said, acquisition analysis, then, you're kind of missing the bigger picture. So when you're putting things together, step one, data analysis, the first step of any marketing campaign. And so, to kind of put this on a micro level, talk about developing audience personas. And, this is the part where you're just like, time-saving Sally, and you figure out like who time-saving Sally is, or whoever these little demographic pockets that you look at. And I think for a lot of people that we work with, they end up going very macro on this, very generic. My question for you, Randy, is how can Jumpshot help here in terms of helping customers identify audience?
It's a good question. I'm getting some feedback here. So as you said, currently, audience personas are based on these simple demographics. So you do get people who say, as you say, time-saving Sally. There's the urban hipster. There is the soccer mom or whatever it's going to be. Those really they're more kind of simple and broad look that's always just been the industry standard. So, it's normal to say, oh, I can figure out all the males who like cars that are aged 30 to 35 in Nashville, and make this much money as their household income. That's all fine, but it's a general, broad swath of who that person is. And it really doesn't get into more granular detail about what is it that they really actually do online in their activities. So where Jumpshot and Clickstream data comes in is that we could actually get more granular and don't concern ourselves so much with this persona broad swath, but instead we can show somebody say, hey, instead of looking at it from that perspective, we can give the demographic, but layer on top of it, are these people who tend to purchase certain types of books on Amazon? Or are they the people who binge watch Stranger Things on Netflix? And people who are going and actually buying luxury hotels as opposed to 3-star hotels on Expedia in certain locations. It then gets to the point of understanding, okay, my audience coming in, I find that they fit this demographic, but this is their purchase and their interest behavior. They're actually people who like to spend a lot of money on travel, but maybe they like to find deep discounts because they use coupons.com and Retail Me Not when it comes to buying clothing or something online. And when you get that level of granularity and start understanding how your customers or your web visitors spend the rest of their time online, it helps you be able to tailor the content that you're going to write for them. If you're focused on content on your own site, and really tailor that to their actual interests and activities. Or you could actually focus on the sites where they're spending a lot of time or the types of products that they're buying and purchasing, and reach out to those different companies for partnerships or content sharing deals, or write guest blogs or any of that nature, but really have a better idea of where these people actually are elsewhere online, as opposed to just understanding what they generally might look like. And that's where Jumpshot really can help.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond just, where else might they be consuming content, but like, how do you want to create this content? So like you said, if they're this demographic of people is really into Stranger Things, creating a Stranger Things themed infographic, right? Or doing a content series on your website that is around particular purchases that that they've made within that area. I think it helps you start to fill in these areas. And I almost see Jumpshot, like if you look at it from behavior analytics, starting with Google, that's kind of a 2D view of your user, right? It's like age, gender, and then basic geography, some in-market analytics, and then Jumpshot makes it a 3D view, where now you're really starting to see this is what the consumer, not only generically who they are, but this is what their likes are, and this is kind of some of their actual behaviors, and then try to fill that in. I mean, from our business, from a creative standpoint, is really figuring out, because great content marketing is all about pushing buttons on an emotional level, and so now you can start to understand things that these people love, or also what they may hate because of where they're visiting, and start to tug on those pieces.
Sure. And you have a lot of great kind of tools that are out there already, Google Trends and any of these other Facebook trending topics. You get an idea of what people generally are interested in, and a lot of blogging contents tend to capitalize on those. Oh yeah, perfect. Right. In the next slide.
That was the next slide. Yes.
Yeah. What a great lead in. And that's still very, very general. And I like to think about it in this way. I'm a big snowboarder. If I'm going to at a resort and I like to snowboard, if that resort happened to know about me, and I also I loved Stranger Things on Netflix. I bring it up just because I was talking about it with somebody this morning, even though it's a little dated now, 6 months ago. But if that resort knew that I was coming or I was visiting, and knew that I liked to watch Stranger Things as opposed to, let's say House of Cards on Netflix, and they wound up doing some type of email blast to me that was focused on a Stranger Things theme, the odds that I'm going to open that email and get more involved or excited about visiting that resort skyrocket, right? Yep. Compared to sending me something and like, hey, we know you binge Netflix. Come to, watch something here. It's just not tailored enough that it won't get my interest. It's always about the specifics that really gets people's interest.
Yeah, and I think where Jumpshot is one tool. Places where you really need to start creating like a mosaic of data you're looking at. So trending topics, and going back to the Stranger Things concept. If you know somebody loves Stranger Things, and the Super Bowl ad comes up, right? Now you have these two things colliding where, all right, like, let's put an email blast out. Did you see the new Stranger Things ad? Like, blah, 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 like trying to do some kind of play around that. So I think there's places where, these are the likes or dislikes, right? Like, so my buyer is a Patriots fan in the Northeast, right? And then Patriots win the Super Bowl. I know I can put these pieces together to influence the content better. Or ads, or whatever it is that you're doing. So I think that's a place where you can take two data sets and start to get some really good wins in places. So setting performance and return goals, and this is something that I'm sure that Jumpshot works with a lot of pure ad buying customers. From the content marketing space, we still have a really hard time with people setting KPIs and goals. And then furthermore, trying to figure out what they want to track from those KPIs or goals, right? Like the end goal of just traffic for traffic's sake is something we try to stay away from, try to push people more towards actual conversion-based KPIs. But, setting performance return goals is important, not just so you can track and say, okay, are we on pace to meet our goals, but also so you can see, so you have incremental information to analyze and say, have we improved upon these from the last time? So you have things like first party data. This is where you're on your site, performance history, growth trends, company goals, all stuff that you control the data and really nobody else may have access to. I think this is where a majority of people, start at least with their KPIs. Then you have things like second party data. I think this is where you have your general analytics, right? Google Analytics, site search, keyword terms, path to purchase, popular purchase products. Again, data you own, but you're getting help filtering it. Back in the day, we used to use just log files and be able to parse that data to get this. But now we have software sets to help us analyze it better. And then third party data. And this is, the second party to third party data is where I think companies like Jumpshot really are starting to come into the field to help us flesh this stuff out more. Because you just have access to data that the normal consumer simply doesn't, right? And then we obviously have to figure out, I know all of these visitors love to also visit Amazon along with me. How do I utilize that information? So we have a poll now.
Yes, we do. We just want to look at what type of data do you collect and use for your KPIs and goals.
And as you're doing that, Randy, what are some second party data sources that Jumpshot offers, and I guess also third party data sources? You talked about I know the data sources are the 100 million, right, devices, but I guess the bigger thing was like in terms of upstream and downstream data, what are some interesting things that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, so the way that we think about second party data is that if you have your own site, you have CopyPress's own site, you have your first party data, which could either be your log files, or if you use Google Analytics, will be Google Analytics. So anything you can see in there or in your log files is your own first party data. You have access to it. You have access to whoever's downloading any of your white papers, your reports. You have, I'm sure, a customer warehouse, all of that type of information. Second party data is the browsing activity and the purchase activity that's happening on other sites. So typically, you probably wouldn't want to give that to anybody. Your own data, you don't really want to share that with other people. You don't give other people access to your backend Google Analytics to look at it and potentially figure out how to build content or build campaigns off of that data and potentially even target that audience. What we do, because we have access to hundreds of thousands of domains browsing activity, is we basically get that Google Analytics view of any site that's out there. So if you're interested in looking at like a competitive peer set, let's say, and you want to know how is my path to conversion, I think it's pretty good. I have my page views. I know where people are coming from. I know how they get there. I have, let's say, if I do downloads, let's say I have a form that people fill out. People start that form, then they complete it, and they download the white paper, and my download completion rate is 15%. Sounds great. What Jumpshot can do is you could actually say, okay, well, I want to look at mine compared to, here are my 4 other competitors in my space, or here are 4 other people that I really like. I want to see what does their path to form completion funnel look like. And as you look at that, all of a sudden you find out that your 15%, while it might sound good, isn't good because all the other 4 have a completion rate of 75%. And you realize that you are leaving a lot on the table in terms of where your actual conversion rate could be tweaked on your site to make improvements. And it isn't necessarily about getting more traffic. It's about figuring out how to make the current traffic you have work better. So that's one way in kind of the lead form fill out that we have access to. Think about it from an e-commerce standpoint. If I am an apparel retailer, competitive intelligence is key to understanding how you're doing in terms of market share against your competitors in the space and how you're performing compared to them and whether you're doing well or not. These are billion-dollar companies with massive goals ahead of them. And so making small tweaks to improve their conversion rate by 1%, it can have massive impact on their bottom line. And so again, the same kind of concept. We can show the entire funnel. So people who are visiting the site and then visit products, put something into their shopping cart, starting the checkout to purchase, and then completing that checkout. And you look at that entire funnel, again, you might feel great because you have, say, a 3% conversion rate, but then you go and look at Amazon and you're like, oh, wow, they're converting at a 7% conversion rate. Like, we need to do better. We've done so many case studies around like wholesale retailers looking at Costco versus looking at Nike, not against each other, but different verticals. I don't know, looking at Expedia versus travel companies like Hilton and Hyatt, and we really cover a very, very wide array of industries. So understanding those pieces of information can then help your user experience team or anybody else say, like, look, we don't need to focus on the conversion rate necessarily on the final page. Maybe what we need to focus on is getting people into the checkout path, like getting them into the shopping cart, adding stuff into the shopping cart. That's where we're falling behind. It can really help pinpoint the pain points that you're having on the site. So other areas too, site search to me, I have an SEO background. So site search is totally fascinating to me. I've always used it in my past as a way to help to mine my internal data to understand what people are looking for once they get to my site. And then you can build out new content based on site search and, build stuff around there. It's a great utilization tool. And you can find that for your own site and your backend analytics. But again, like what Jumpshot can provide is that we actually see the site search keyword terms that are happening on any domain that's in our panel. So you could not only optimize against your own, but you can find out what are people interested in that they're going to other sites. And from a content perspective, imagine being able to go to BuzzFeed, let's say, if you just happen to be a news site, and you can go on and see what people are searching on BuzzFeed, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, they're really interested in puzzles and polls and games. I mean, that's probably not too hard to fathom and understand, but you can get a better idea of the trending topics and then write content around that to then compete with the bigger guys. Like that's something that nobody has access to because nobody's going to share that. But using backend analytics like ours, that's something that you can gain access to really improve your content.
Okay. Yeah. So, the next thing is looking at analytics for intra-campaign adjustments. So I think what you talked about, right? Like gauging yourself against your competition, getting a good baseline for what they're doing that you're not necessarily doing. But now, how do we utilize the analytics to really optimize on our site as well? Right. And so when you guys are working with customers, right. So like after you give them that baseline data of like, all right, you're converting 30% less than your customer base. How do you help them create, and maybe you don't help them, but like how does your data help them create the next steps on how they should optimize? And you find that they then work with a tool set to do more A/B testing. So like, now that we have this data, we'll do A/B testing Google Analytics or whatever they're using to get closer to this number and continue to iterate. Like, how does that process go?
Yeah, I mean, there are great tools out there for A/B testing, and Optimizely is a really good one. It makes it very simple for kind of a plug and play model. But going through and making these changes and tweaks, and then potentially rerunning the analytics against the peer set, on a monthly basis or a timing basis to understand, like, okay, we've now made this change internally, we've seen an impact. Have our competitors also seen an impact, an improvement? Is this just a general seasonality kind of piece, or really is the changes that we've actually made actually having a legitimate increase, and are we continuing to optimize our performance? And then you can go back in and complete the cycle and make some more changes and change your call to actions. We don't really play in the user experience area, but there are a lot of places that say, like, mess with your colors, mess with your language, try different offers, try different headlines. And each of those individual pieces can definitely have help and an assistance. And most of those tools have their built-in analytics themselves that'll help guide which one's working the best, and then help to automate and just move everything towards the one that's performing better. So finding a winner really quickly.
Right. And so, I mean, that baseline you're setting as well, like this person's doing things 30% better than you. I mean, you have whatever that company is doing as the roadmap, right? So you can look at what you're doing comparatively. And then I'm guessing, if I want to, I then can go to an Optimizely and be like, all right, we want to increase our conversion rate from 15% to 30%. We're going to try these 3 different layouts based on what competitor X is doing. Like as the roadmap, begin to tweak with this as our goal conversion rate. And so this is a place where, that second party, third party data, or second party data is really helping to inform how we're using first party data to make better campaigns.
Yeah, exactly. And I would also say that it's By being able to benchmark against a competitive set, you can really understand whether the improvement you're seeing means that you're just getting up to the table stakes being in the game, or you actually really doing as well as you possibly can, and being the leader in the space. People can get very excited by seeing an improvement of 50% over your funnel conversion rate. But if you're still in last place compared to your competitive set, like, you've made improvements, but you still have a long way to go. Where some people might just see that 50% improvement and be like, all right, we're doing great, and stop there. But this can allow you to do even more.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about campaigns now where recently where I've had people in lead generation kind of verticals, B2B, come in and they're looking to spend 6 to 7 figures on content generation. And they're like, this is going to be our lead gen flow. So we're going to bring people in through these content pieces. They're going to convert into leads from these content pieces. And it's all been done like from a theoretical standpoint. Like, this, theoretically, this should work. And I'm thinking about Jumpshot now to be able to be like, wait, let's take a deep breath, go into this space from a B2B perspective and see how people are converting from a user flow. And so now, yeah, we know. So my background is SEO as well. We know the SEO traffic's there, but once we gather that, are they actually going to convert from these pages, right?
Yeah.
And be able to take that, and now before you put a rubber stamp on a 6 or 7 figure SEO / content deal, you can be like, hey, this is not just based on assumptions and macro data of search traffic that's there, but also based on, hey, we know how these pages are converting on other people's sites.
Yeah, completely. And actually, I mean, not to kind of tangent a little bit, but since you're an SEO guy too, one of the things that's really interesting about clickstream data is that because it's capturing at the URL level, the data, it captures a Google search query before Google has the ability to strip out the keyword and bucket it all into not provided in the back end in Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics, which I'm sure everybody who looks at their analytics is frustrated that 95 to 98% of their search traffic all falls into that bucket. With clickstream data, you can actually capture what the actual search query is that somebody has typed in. So it's sort of going back to how old school search used to be, where you had a lot more visibility into it. That's actually what got me very excited about Jumpshot and clickstream data in the very first place.
Yeah, that is awesome because they've stripped out one of our most precious tools and being able to optimize our organic and earned media campaigns, because we're guessing a lot of the time based on search volume and then taking percentages, right, and landing pages and trying to figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah, we're saying, well, we're actually trying to put that back into the market. Yeah. We're like, we know you've done all that work. That's great, but there's actually a way to get back to that data again. Anyway, side tangent.
It's good to know. So, next step after you've set your performance and return goals, analytics for intra-campaign, right? Like, so now we find out, like, really tweaking things is understanding the customer journey. So, I think a lot of people say, okay, well, we need to optimize this landing page and say, all right, we need to optimize this for the actual conversion. But what they're not thinking about is, well, what did they have to do to get to this landing page? And what are they going to have to do after they get to this landing page? How do we optimize this entire flow, right? And so yesterday I was actually on a lead gen site where it was one of those things, you put in a zip code and then it brings you to the next page, right? And obviously you lose conversions as you go through there. Or another piece of this puzzle is, like you mentioned, e-commerce, right? Like, you hear things all the time like cart abandonment. And so understanding, like, how do people not only get to the conversion point, but visualizing the funnel and understanding where different traffic sources and how they react to the funnel assisted conversions. And I'm guessing these are all things, again, first party data, we can collect it from Google Analytics for us, but where Jumpshot can come in is now we can take our funnel and do a comparative analysis to our 3 or 4 competitors, correct?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one area where our data can help. The second area is imagine that with these 4 circles, well, now imagine that there are circle and icons both to the left and the right. And the left is where were those people that, what were they doing before they even came to the site? And that doesn't mean outside of, yes, they came in from search, or they came in from affiliates, or they came in from display, or from referral traffic. But where were they 2 steps before that? Like, what were they actually doing? And then on the end side, if they did download a white paper, or they, let's say, didn't, where did they go next? Did they wind up doing a new Google search that was a little bit more tailored to what they needed, because what you were offering wasn't quite right? And maybe it wasn't that what you were offering wasn't quite right, but maybe the language just wasn't quite right. And so they wound up doing a new query that was just slightly different, but they landed on a different content site or lead gen site that had an article that might have been very, very similar, but the header copy was a little bit different. And they wind up getting the download out of it. So that next step, outside of what's inside your analytics, that's the stuff that's currently invisible to people. And that's something where Jumpshot really can shed some light.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of slipped my mind here as we were beginning to talk about it, is like, you guys actually widen the funnel out to the not such a myopic view of your website, or the myopic view of how people function on your competitors' website, but where they're coming and going to on both of those locations, right?
Yeah, exactly. We think about it like a magnifying glass. Most people are looking through a magnifying glass, and they can see very detailed in their own stuff. But what they forget to do sometimes is to lift up their head and put the magnifying glass on the ground, and then realize that there's an entire world outside that magnifying glass. And we provide the visibility into that entire world.
That's awesome. So then in our process of what we're looking at here, the next step is, right, so you've created your goals, you've created and optimized the content on the campaign level. You've taken a large view of visualizing the funnel, both on and off site. Now you're looking at evaluating the actual data you got from a campaign. So this would be where we're looking at data from people that actually did convert or didn't convert, and saying, okay, like, starting to think about, like, how often are they buying, what types of items you will buy, if they'll return. And so this is where, we start talking about, I think, artificial intelligence, and like where stuff like Amazon's AI components can help you. But is the data that you guys are working with, because it sounds like you're able to see like how often people are doing certain actions, what they might be. Are you doing it? Is it easier for me to take data from you to make predictive analysis than it would necessarily for me to take smaller sets of data from Google Analytics to make that same predictive analysis?
I don't know whether it would be easier necessarily, but I think what Jumpshot can offer is a wider view. So think about it in this way: if you're running let's say you're running a branding or a retargeting campaign of some nature, you're an e-commerce company. What you have visibility into is whether people have interacted with that creative or that ad somewhere, and then did they actually buy something on your own site? That's your limitation. There's your KPI, your metric. You even look at engagement, reach, impressions, traffic, and eventually conversions on your own site, and you determine your ROI. Was my campaign successful based on how much people bought on my site? What Jumpshot has the ability to do is say, like, okay, that's one way of looking at it. To round that out, though, if you are a company who sells your products somewhere else besides just on your own site, there's a high chance that your creative and your ad campaigns, even if they're branding, are influencing people to go purchase your products on other sites. And right now you don't have any way to tie those two pieces together. Or maybe your piece is to gain branding and awareness, but you don't really have a way to tie, did that lead to an increase of people searching for your brand related products on Google? Where Jumpshot comes in is we say, okay, well, let's work with you on the campaign. We could either match people that are exposed to your data through kind of a data onboarder with our panel, or we can do it in a few different ways. But and have the ability to take the campaign that you've run and said, okay, you know what's happening on your own site, but let's pick 5 or 10 other types of events that are interesting to you. And that might be, maybe you sell on Amazon. So maybe you want to look at transactions on Amazon, and maybe you also sell on Target and Walmart. There's 3 different sites. Maybe you're interested in Google queries to understand if this is generating a larger brand awareness. What we then do is we look on a daily or weekly basis, how often has somebody then bought your product on Amazon after being exposed to your ad campaign? You then on the back end can tie that in and say, okay, we originally gave attribution to our campaign because it drove this many dollars on our own site. But now we've actually know that it actually helped influence people buying our product on Amazon by this amount. And it helped people buy Target, product on Target by this amount. And our brand got an increase in awareness on Google by this percentage because we've seen more searches with our name in it from people who've been exposed to this ad. You start taking in that holistic view of your business and your campaigns, and it should, if you have a little bit of a sophisticated marketing program where you're trying to figure out where to spend your dollars by channel, well, now you have a better view of how are those channels actually really impacting your business, rather than just looking purely at what's happening on your own site.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Excuse me. And I think that kind of data can help people really estimate, okay, this is the spend that we created to get this traffic, but then what's going to be the lifetime value of this customer that we acquired, and then set expectations from there. Because I think lifetime value is something where we are really stuck with first party data to be like, all right, well, this is the consumer and this is how much stuff they've bought, in a traditional sense where, all right, but we also know that, hey, they're going over here to buy similar products and they're going over here. So, if we just did XYZ and did some advertising on this site, maybe we can get them back and increase lifetime value of a consumer. All right. So, setting goals and opportunities for improvement. Every campaign should end up with a review of what went right and what needs to be improved upon. First thing, why did one channel perform better than the rest? What made the medium ideal for reaching the audience and turn it into customers? What media struggled throughout the process? What would your team have done differently? I think this is a place from a content side we rarely see people go. Again, there's a lot of shooting from the hip and saying, well, we think this stuff will work. And then it's just, well, did it work or did it not work? There's simply no nuance in, well, why didn't it work? And people deciding to go from there and figure out something else. Randy, what are some ways that you've seen customers use data in a successful way to answer some of these questions? And then my mind goes back to the AI conversation of being able to say, what would we have done differently? But I'm guessing that there are some things that Jumpshot's able to do to figure out, and so this might be where Jumpshot comes into some campaigns for some people where it's like, we're really not sure why this campaign didn't go effectively. And then you're able to help them look at competitive analysis to say, well, here's why, right? Like, here's what your competitors did compared to what you did.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one area to look into it. Another one is, again, it kind of goes back to the idea of audience persona versus just audience behavior. And if you're targeting a very general idea with a broad brush of a persona, that doesn't necessarily get into the exact detail of what those people are like. People definitely have a much more individualistic set of interests. I go back to that Netflix example. There's a very big difference between a Netflix user or a Netflix binger. That by itself doesn't tell you very much, but you can get to the point of a Netflix, what category do people actually watch, or get in very deeper as to what shows they're watching. And once you get to that type of granularity and understanding the difference between the audience and what they're interested in, then again, you can know whether or not your content that you've written or the campaign you've run just wasn't targeted enough. And you can make it more targeted and more relative to people based on their, actual legitimate interests. So I think that's a big one. I obviously I'm a performance marketer background, so the concept of running campaigns without some type of goal and opportunity at the end to understand what you're trying to achieve hurts me. But it is definitely still a learning process for a lot of different areas of company, and to get a better understanding not just of your top level traffic KPI metrics, but really understanding at a more granular level will help future programs improve. It's just really the only way to do it.
Yep, I concur. And I think one of the things that people can think about doing is building out, for all of these pieces, is building out some type of templated way to look at the data and then to structure it as you go. So having some kind of analysis in place, by that I mean just like a templated report, right? Like, hey, we're going to report this, we're going to measure A against B, and then if it's off, we're going to go down D route, things like that. Again, for me, all of these steps should be planned before you even begin a campaign, so we know like how we're setting it up. When we're setting goals, we know how we're going to be measuring those goals as well at the end, and how we're going to go about them. So one of the last topics to talk about is just big data and machine learning. I think this is the wave of the future, just predictive analysis of what people are going to do. We're seeing big companies rolling out these kind of tools, right? So IBM, Amazon. In that scenario, Jumpshot's the big data, right? And then the big data goes into the machine learning for predictive analysis. Have you seen any customers doing anything really interesting in this space, or using your data in interesting ways that you guys didn't think about?
Yeah, there are a couple ways that I can just think offhand. One is there are companies that are interested to understand how businesses are performing as a whole based on, let's say, transaction counts or product page views or some type of event that's happening on the site, and then try to run some financial regression models to get an understanding of how much revenue are they actually making, and then being able to make some estimates on, playing the stock market potentially, let's say, or whether there's a private, let's say Snapchat, right? Just had their IPO today. Somebody could theoretically have used Jumpshot or other types of big data to get an idea of, do they actually have strong user growth, or are they having more people cancel and not be active in their accounts, to get a better idea of these types of metrics that companies don't necessarily have to release to the general public. So that one's pretty interesting.
You have a lot of like VC companies coming to you guys, because I would think that would be, if I was going to make an investment in something, I would immediately be not just, hey, are these guys giving me the right data, but what does the market look like for this? Or I guess on the other side too, M&A activity, like where people are, yeah, we're going to acquire this company. Let's see how much of their traffic is legitimate, and let's see what the space looks like. It seems like you're in a unique place to get that kind of data.
Yeah, those are definitely companies that are very interested in data like that, for sure. They obviously want to get the best price and know about the best investment. I'd say another one that's been interesting, we've been playing around with it a bunch, is looking at sentiment when it comes to Google search queries. So thinking about, you can look at Google Trends to get an idea about how a search term is going up or down at a category level, whether there's interest or not. But where we've been playing around is, well, how about if we dissect that a little bit more to get an idea of what is the sentiment of people that are searching? Are they searching because they're excited or happy? Or are they searching for something because they have a negative view of it? And looking at that, you can kind of have a better idea in terms of then understanding whether you're over a long-term trend, what is the general emotional feeling of the search population in terms of certain topics? Are they feeling good or happy about it, or upset about it? Not just is it popular in the mind's eye in the public at this point in time. So that one's actually very, very interesting for us.
Yeah, that sounds like. It sounds like there's lots that can be done between your data that people have on a first party level, and then the utilization of something as simple as AWS has made their AI pretty straightforward to utilize. And I've messed some with Watson and like IBM stuff, and it's super powerful. I think a lot of what's missing a lot of time is the data to actually do what you want to do with it. And Jumpshot fills in one of those pieces. So machine learning, like, again, I think you can use, I think long-term what's going to happen here is you're going to be able to, in real time, utilize machine learning to like auto adjust offers and like what kind of products display, right? So like if you think about, like recently we were looking for some product on Amazon and products come in several colors, like which color is most, likely that a consumer would purchase. I think those are all things that long-term, like segmenting, taking data, like Jumpshot's data, on-site data, like I can only imagine what Amazon has in terms of data, and then taking and making decisions on what you're displaying. It's all stuff that Google's already doing. Like why are they serving up certain results to certain people and not all personalized search is the core of that. More sensors than ever can collect information. So like I said, Google, right? Like Google's doing the same thing that you guys are doing, right? At Jumpshot, they're using Google Chrome to collect upstream, downstream data, Google Fiber, all those things, right? To be able to collect data sets and then be able to trigger back to the algorithm on why different things should rank in different places for different people, making the SERPs less and less something that we can control on a macro level, which works out for them because then they can sell more ads, which is what they want to do anyway. And so this to me is a really interesting topic. If people want to get in touch with you or want to talk about because Jumpshot's not, we've talked to you guys a couple of times at conferences and the product's amazing, but you guys are definitely an enterprise level product set, right? This isn't a product that you're necessarily going to jump into like a Moz self-serve type option.
No. We are definitely an enterprise level. We don't have a web platform.
Yep. And so if people want to get in contact with you or find out more about the product, because I think we've given them a lot of ideas on, because for me, Jumpshot, I think the days where we can just be like, well, like low cost, I want something that's low cost. Like Jumpshot's not going to be low cost, but the amount of value you can get out of a product like this is, you can't even calculate. I think if you're willing to spend 6 figures, 7 figures more on ad campaigns, content marketing campaigns, SEO, any of your online marketing initiatives, Jumpshot gives you the ability to maximize the potential of those campaigns and validate that expense and why you're getting it done. So it seems like a natural add-on, but how do people get a hold of you or find out more?
I think that's great. They can obviously visit our site at www.jumpshot.com, or more than happy to just contact me at randy.anton@jumpshot.com.
Okay. Randy, I want to thank you for joining us. Jen, when is the white paper? So it's going now.
The white paper will be live now. It went live this morning.
Okay. So I would suggest that you download the white paper because the white paper is full of really great data. Again, that was produced alongside Jumpshot giving us information and then CopyPress applying it to how, we would utilize it from a content marketing perspective. What is next month's webinar topic?
We will be talking about growing and sculpting your link portfolio. That will be April's topic.
Is that with link research tools?
Yes.
Okay. So that's another good topic. Again, Randy, thanks for joining us. And we will talk to everyone later.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.